Chapter 40. I've seen mean gents in my day, but this genie took the cake. He was wearing a blood-red tapestry embroidered with scenes of people dying violently. Where the tip of his nose should have been, he had a scar in the shape of tooth marks. Red welts crisscrossed his bare chest. His single lock of hair, as thick around as a black cat's tail, lifted straight up off his crown and coiled down across his shoulders like a wild cat oil gusher. Storybook genies usually have big pot bellies and flabby arms. Not this one. In a Mr. Universe competition, he'd lose points for having a lantern instead of legs, but his fabulous upper body development just might win him the crown. I stuck out my hand. I don't believe I've had the pleasure. His hawkish screech nearly broke my eardrums. Near as I could tell, he was trying to talk, but couldn't get the knack of it. "Frog in your throat?" I asked. The genie hauled back a gigantic arm and socked me on the jaw. My rear molars rattled together like dice in a hot shooter's hand. In a way, I could understand the genie's foul disposition. I'd probably be testy too if I spent the last few centuries cooped up inside a lantern with people pouring boiling water over my head. "That's no way to win friends and influence people," I said, rubbing my face. When would I ever learn? He hit me again, and 1,000 canaries took turns whistling me a lullaby. By the time the music stopped, the genie had remembered how to speak.
"Do nothing unseemly,"
he growled. He leveled his gun at me and floated back and forth above his spigot, stretching his smoky umbilical connection to a fine line in first one direction and then the other. Must have been the genie equivalent of pacing the floor. Since he seemed to have calmed down, I took a stab at breaking the ice. Kinda muggy, was it, inside that oil drum on the bottom of the sea? He raised up that section of his right forehead where his eyebrow used to be before the dynamite exploded in his kisser.
"Thou knowest about that?"
"Yeah, the way I figure it, the thief who stole you from Rocco and Dominic DeGreasy must have been a pretty decent guy. No wishes for him. He set out to get rid of you permanently."
"I wonder still, who was that masked man?"
"He knew the only way to destroy you was to submerge you in the ocean. Lucky for you, he sealed you inside an airtight oil drum first." The genie clenched his fists. The ropey muscles in his arm resembled a topographical map of the Rocky Mountains.
"He came close, but won not the cigar."
"The diver who fished you out recognized you for what you were and called you out of your lantern."
"What a surprise I gave him,"
said the genie.
"The first century or two I spent imprisoned in that lantern, I behaved as a veritable toady, granting freely everyone's wishes. Then I ask of myself, what get I out of this? Others use me for their selfish deeds, and I come away with naught. Right then I made a vow. No more Mr. Pleasant Fellow. From then on it became watch out for old Roman numeral 1.
You started by throwing clinkers into the wishes you granted, and you worked up to murder. That's what happened to the diver who brought you up. He released you from your lantern, made a wish, and you strangled him."
"Such a buffoon,"
said the genie.
"Thou knowest what he wished for? Gills so he could breathe underwater. I fixed him so he could not breathe over water."
From there you passed to a junk dealer, a movie prop man, and finally to Roger Rabbit. But none of these three knew what your lantern contained.
"I spent most of those years snoozing."
Then by accident, Roger stumbled across the magic words which released you.
"I would have killed the dreaded mite, except each time he released me, he was in his living room, and I was in his kitchen where he could not see me. I am not that mobile, you know."
He pointed to the lantern, anchoring him to the floor. "Why didn't you shout out to him?" Seeing the genie blush was like watching a boil redden and fester.
"I never thought to. When thou art a shut-in such as I, thou tend to forget how to communicate. I granted the rabbit his wishes, and went back inside my lantern to await a better opportunity to do him in."
Roger wished for Jessica's hand in marriage. You arranged it so she would cease to love the rabbit in exactly 1 year.
One of my favorite ploys. Though I also like what I did to Romeo when he wished for Juliet.
Next, Roger wished for a contract to appear in the strips.
I truly outdid myself there. He got his contract, whereas a perennial second loot.
Roger released you for the 3rd time the night he died. This time he didn't stay in the living room, though. He went upstairs to his bedroom, and from the staircase he saw you in the kitchen.
He asked who might I be,
said the genie.
and I told him it was I who got his wife to marry him, and it was I who got him the contract.
That explained the significance of Roger's last words. He still had a 3rd wish coming.
So what? I was through playing the universal lackey. From thenceforward I was on my own. I pulled forth this pistol I caged from Blackbeard years ago, and shot the rabbit dead.
The genie treated me to a showing of my life story. It passed in front of my eyes when he aimed his pistol at my head and mimed pulling the trigger. I blurted out the first thing that came to mind. After you shot Roger, how did you get outside the house? He lowered his pistol, and my heart rate dropped from rumba rhythm to fast tango.
I disengaged the lock through an application of hocus pocus.
The genie drew himself up nearly to the ceiling, and his lantern made a tiny hop.
Then I did that right out the door, a means of locomotion I discovered right then on the spur of the moment. Centuries I lay in that lantern, and never once thought to hop.
Nothing to be ashamed of. Some people are just slow learners.
Yea, verily. When I hit the sidewalk, I realized I had no idea where to go next, so I crawled back inside my lantern to consolidate my thoughts.
What did you come up with? He thumped himself on the chest hard enough to knock unconscious any creature this side of the Brahma bull.
I decided the next time I came out, I would stay out forever, and that be precisely what I intend to do. If thou thinkest I wilt go back inside that lantern, thou art nutty.
In my apartment, I had Roger Rabbit sing the song that released you. Why didn't you come out then?
That rabbit friend of thine art a doppel. The magic words work only when uttered by a real live tune. Doppels count not.
The genie looked at me with eyes as shiny and malicious as the jagged underside of 2 bottle caps.
Enough of this folderol. I have work for thee to do. I command thee to pick me up.
He pointed to his lantern.
And carry me to the nearest aerial port. There we shall commandeer a flying carpet and whisk to Persia, where I will rule as caliph.
I hate to ruin your grand plan, but flying carpets went the way of the dinosaur. And so did Persia, for that matter.
Persia no longer existeth?
Afraid not.
Who makest thy carpets?
Conglomerates, mostly.
Then I will take over and rule one of those.
You got an MBA?
I understand not thy foolish banter. Get thy cloak and let us be gone.
Sure. I thought back to what Professor Cackleberry told me about destroying a genie. As I remembered it, the first requirement was to be pure of heart. I decided to take a crack at it anyway. Maybe I could catch the pureness of heart judge out on a coffee break. I sauntered over to the genie and bent as if to pick up his lantern. I shut my eyes and said a silent prayer to anybody out there in the great beyond who might be listening, and straightened up. The genie's gun hit me on the shoulder. I rapped his elbow hard with my arm, and his gun clattered to the floor. I kicked it into a corner.
What did thee that for?
Asked the genie, his head cocked at an angle.
Dost thou not knowest I can enchant thee to kingdom come? Total power I have over all living things, humans included. I can turn thee into a cockroach if I so desire, or a toad, or the smallest flea in the fur of an infidel dog. Thou hast not a chance of a Chinaman against me.
I think you're full of beans, I said. Lots of talk and no action. You can work your mumbo-jumbo all day and not hurt me. Come on, Genie. Give it your best shot. And please hang in there, oh pure heart of mine. The genie leered at me and shook his head.
O mortal, what a great fool thou art.
He shut his eyes. A wave of nausea hit me. For a brief instant, I knew what it felt like to sport 6 legs and live on the backside of a chihuahua, but the feeling passed, and except for a slightly queasy stomach, I came out of it completely unchanged. The genie blinked at me and looked at his hands the way a 20-game winner does when his curveball refuses to break. He pointed a crooked index finger at me and roared out some foreign gobbledygook. I got another blast of nausea, but I held my ground. The genie tried again and again and again, until I finally got tired of fooling with him and called a halt to it. "Enough, Genie," I said. "I beat you fair and square."
"That be what thou thinkest,"
said the genie. Such voodoo wasn't working for him. He tried physical mayhem instead. He pulled back one of his massive arms and let go a punch that added a zag to my already amply zigged nose. He packed a wallop, but I'd taken worse. Once from a guy wielding a sledgehammer. I gave the genie as good as I got. A roundhouse right to the old beezer. He went backward, but, like one of those bottom-weighted inflatable rubber clowns, he hit the floor and bounced right back up again. He grabbed me in a headlock and the fight began. I have no idea how long we wrestled. It was probably minutes, but seemed more like days. He had power, I had mobility. Unfortunately, he also had an extra psychological edge. He knew as well as I did that, no matter what the outcome of this tussle, he could never really lose in the end. The only way for me to destroy him permanently was to drop him into an ocean, and it was a long, long walk to the nearest one of those. Then I saw something I hadn't noticed before. Dominic DeGreasy had a fish tank. A saltwater fish tank. I kneed the genie as hard as I could in the spigot. He moaned and doubled over. Before he could recover, I picked him up and carried him to the fish tank and held him over the top. He took one look inside and immediately got the picture.
"Holdest thou off?"
he said.
"Let us discuss our differences as civilized men."
"There's nothing to talk over, Genie. You play ball with me, or you go for a permanent swim."
"What wouldst thou have of me? There be nothing I can give thee."
"I want 3 wishes."
"Impossible,"
stated the genie flatly.
"I canst grant wishes only to toons."
"Make an exception." I submerged the base of the lantern in the tank, and smoke billowed out where it touched.
"Ow! Ow! Ow! Agreed! Agreed!"
shouted the genie, sweat pouring off his forehead.
"One wish I will grant thee. It be really the best I could do."
"Deal," I said. "My wish is to have conclusive proof that Dominic DeGreasy shot both Roger Rabbit and his brother Rocco."
"That be all?
asked the genie.
No money? No women? No power?"
"That's it," I said. "Simple as can be."
"Thou shalt have it,"
the genie said.
"I grant it, and with no skullduggery."
He shut his eyes and boom! A suicide note handwritten by Dominic DeGreasy appeared magically in my free hand. In the note, Dominic explained that he shot his brother during an argument centered around who should have control over the business. Roger Rabbit saw him do it, so he went to Roger's house and shot the rabbit too. Dominic could not live with the guilt of his actions, so he also shot himself. A good note. It would take both Roger and Jessica off the hook. I put it in my pocket. "Thanks, Genie," I said, "and adios." I dropped the lantern, Genie included, into the fish tank.
"But thou promised!"
shouted the genie as he shriveled away in a cloud of steam.
"Thou promised!"
"I lied," I said. Then I called the police.